John, please, this time it's for you. Please take a stage, and we are switching into English for a moment with the small Polish insert during the speech, I guess. And I really do hope that as many Polish managers, you will enjoy the teachings from John.
Dziękuję, Marek. Witam Państwo, witam. Well, this is... Przepraszam, jestem Amerykaninem, tak? Nie mówię po polsku. Mieszkam 8 lat w Krakowie i 3 lata w Warszawie i nie mówię po polsku. Po polsku jest niewiarygodne. It's niemożliwe dla mnie. So we're going to do this in English. So przepraszam. There's so many signs about what's happening in the world that it's unavoidable. I don't think anything has ever happened. I'm a history major. I can't think of a single moment in history when the entire planet, not a major portion, but the entire Earth, has been affected by the same force. I do some work with the Maasai people in Kenya, in the bush. They're these tall, the tall people. They wear the red shukas. Amazing people. They haven't changed their culture in 500 years. They are affected by this COVID virus. So if the people in the bush in Kenya are affected by this, is there any place on the earth that isn't affected? Every institution, if you think about it, education, finance, government, health care. I mean, can you think of any place, any industry, any segment of the world that isn't in some way being affected by this COVID-19 situation? I can't think of one. So this leads me to this quote that's been very significant for me my whole career in leadership development, from T.S. Eliot, this American author. He says, everyone gets the experience, some get the lesson. So everyone on the planet is getting this experience. You don't get to avoid this, in spite of what my president thinks from time to time. You cannot get around this. It is real, and it is real for everybody. Everyone's getting the experience. Some get the lesson. So my invitation, I would like to use my time for you. Thank you, by the way, Marek, for this invitation. I'd like to use my 10 minutes to invite you to get the lesson and give you some ways of thinking about what's happening that might be useful to you as an individual, in your relationships, in your family, as well as in your company and in your country. Every level is affected this way, and every level can get the lesson. So here we go. You know that the Chinese figure for crisis, it's a crisis. It's a planetary crisis, and we're in the middle of it. Now, the Chinese character for crisis has two characters. The first one is threat or danger. The second symbol in that pairing stands for moment of choice. Now, it's been popularly misunderstood as opportunity, but no. That second character says, no, it's a choice point. We don't get to negotiate on the first one. It's a threat. Stuff comes at you every day. That's why you're sitting in this room. You would not be in this room if you weren't dealing with stuff coming at you all the time. We use the metaphor in our leadership development work called facing the tiger. If you're in a jungle and a tiger comes up on you, what's the human instinct to do? You can say it out loud. Run, exactly. If you run, 6 million years or whatever it is of evolutionary wisdom kicks in, and this tiger sees this small, slow figure trying to run away. The yummy one with the crunchy center, the tiger thinks. And he says to himself, what? Lunch. He cannot stop himself, or she. They do a lot of hunting. A small, slow figure running away. The tiger is hardwired to attack a small, slow figure running away. It will knock you down and kill you and then either eat you now or later. But the people who live there say, if you turn and face the tiger. Now, he may still eat you. This is not a magic story here, okay? But he'll stop and think about it. Now, that is a very, very significant shift. Because if you run, what are your chances? 0. If you face the tiger, what are your chances? Something greater than 0. Come on, there's a lot of banks in here. You should know this. Something greater than 0. It's worth the shot. Because if you're running, your chances are 0. Don't think you're getting away with something by not facing it. That's the point. If you're not facing a tiger, it's already eating you. Otherwise, you would not be calling it a tiger. This virus is a tiger that is attacking every single individual, every system from the family to nation states. And it is facing us. And what are we going to do? You can't whistle past the cemetery, as we used to say back in Virginia. So, it's a threat. What are you going to do about it? I love this. I love your slogan here. No future without entrepreneurship. I just think that's fabulous. I've started 3, I'm an entrepreneur, I guess. I've started 3 organizations. They've done fairly well. Scherer Leadership Center is now based in Warsaw. I'm from Seattle. I moved here 12 years ago, and I moved my base here a few years ago. So I'm with you in this entrepreneur thing. Now, what are you to do about the future? There's 2 attitudes toward the future, and I've seen them ever since I've been here, and especially since the virus hit. One attitude seems to me to be, I can't wait until this is over. I can't wait for us to get back to the way it was before. Now, my first thought is, do you really want to go back to the way it was before? I mean, seriously, was it really all that great? Was every aspect of your life, of your business, of your world, was it really all that great? I don't think there is a go back. I don't think there is a reset. I may be wrong. But I think if a company or a person or a leadership team is waiting for things to pass by so you can keep doing what you used to do, I think that organization is in trouble. So what I love about your motto here, your slogan here is, you're not going to have a future if you don't have an entrepreneurial attitude, especially in your leadership team. Now, I teach that leadership is an attitude, not a position. You want this attitude through you want leadership existing through your entire organization. You want the person on the front line to be acting like it's their organization. When I check into a hotel, which I used to do up until March, check in a hotel, by the time I've interacted with the front staff, the front desk, maybe somebody in the kitchen, maybe somebody in the, from the housekeeping crew, I can tell you what the leadership philosophy is of that organization. Because I'm being treated the way they're treated. So leadership is something that happens, it's not about altitude, it's about attitude. So you want your leadership attitude going through the whole. How do you want people to be thinking about the future? Okay, let me tell you what the 2 options are. One of them is from the Latin word futurus. It's where we get the word future. It's the future tense of the verb to be. That attitude says the future is going to be a lot like it was. Budgeting is a great example. You have to do this. You stand in the present moment and you look back at the past and you figure out what was happening up to now, and then you project it into the future. That attitude says our mission when it comes to the future is to predict accurately. We're trying to guess what's going to happen. We're trying to not be wrong about what we think is going to happen. Now, one of my high school buddies became a general in the U.S. Army, 4-star general. He led the 101st Airborne around the Republican Guard in the first Iraq War. And I met him for breakfast after the war, and we were talking, and I was talking about leadership, and he said, Johnny, you got to tell the leaders that you work with a very important principle. I said, what's that? He said, planning is priceless. The plan itself is useless. Have you ever had a budget? You have to budget. You have to plan. Has anybody in here ever had a budget turn out the way you wrote it? Come on. So far in 30 years, I've never had anybody raise their hand, but I keep hoping that somebody will raise their hand. We can find out, where they went to business school. Have you ever had your strategy happen exactly the way you wrote it? No. You have to plan, but the plan itself is useless. So when it comes to the future, you have to make plans for the future, but the one thing you know is not going to happen is what's in the plan. When you're facing a situation like we have now with so many variables in motion, so many threats at so many levels, predicting the future is absolutely impossible, and yet you have to do your best. Now, fortunately, there's another stance toward the future, a different word completely, in the Latin again, Adventus, another Latin word for the future, Adventus. What word does that remind you of? Adventure. If you've ever been on a camping trip or canoeing trip or something like that, maybe you've been down this river before, maybe you've been down this path before, but you never know for sure. Is that tree still going to be there? Is that rock still going to be there? You never know. So if the future can be seen as Adventus, let me tell you what becomes possible and how that attitude came into being. That attitude was partially invented by a Polish guy, professor, named Kurt Lewin. Nobody knows this. They think he's German. He was born in Mogilno, Poland, 1890. He's the grandfather of my field, applied behavioral science, which is the whole plan change, facilitating change. All the stuff that we do now goes back to Kurt Lewin. God bless him. He emigrated to Germany to teach at the university. When Hitler came to power, fortunately, he and his family left, came to America. When he got to America, he created this field of applied behavioral science. How do you facilitate change? And Kurt Lewin, and his first graduate student in America was a guy named Ron Lippitt, and Ron was my mentor in this field. So I feel like I'm one handshake away from the grandfather of this field. And I was speaking with a magazine editor a month or so ago about this, and I brought this up, and she got very emotional, and she said, "John, you're bringing Kurt back to us." I came here 12 years ago to introduce this field because it looked like not many people knew about it. And so I'm still here. I came for 6 months. And that was in August of 2008. 2 months later, you know what happened to the economy? The bubble broke. And I said, well, I'll stick around for a little while until things turn around in America. Well, here I am 12 years later, and I'm still here because there still is a need for this. This is what I learned from Ron Lippitt, who learned about it from Kurt Lewin. Change happens in 3 phases. Usually an executive team will call me because there's what we call a burning platform in my business. Market share is dropping, there's some new competitors on the scene, there's a crisis somehow, and you just can't avoid it. So we get the call, can you come and help us respond to this particular crisis? Think of it this way. Kurt says the first thing that has to happen is an unfreeze. Sometimes all the patterns have to be interrupted. There's a pattern interrupt. The burning platform says, you can't keep doing what you've been doing. You've got to make some change. This virus is a global pattern interrupt. All the patterns, every single pattern. I mean, I'm sheltering in place with my 53-year-old son who happened to be here when it happened. And it's been, thank God, but we're stuck in my little place. And this virus is looking for people like me. I'm 80 years old, okay? I'm 80 years old with lung problems from living in Krakow for 8 years. Please don't, anybody from Krakow, don't be offended. I love Krakow, but the air is not really what you want to be breathing all the time. And I'm a runner, marathon runner, so every day I'd get up, run around the Boynia, didn't realize what was happening, so I moved to Warsaw. So this virus is looking for me. John Scherer, Yannick, where is he? I know he's in here. We're going to go get this guy. So I do this a lot. I feel like a chicken sometimes, but I would rather be safe. Kurt says the first thing that happens is unfreeze. The virus has unfrozen everything. It's thrown all the cards up in the air. Now, well, I know, I can see you going, well, not all the cards. Okay, good for you. Which cards are still going to be the same when they hit the ground? So what a fabulous opportunity. Instead of having to create a crisis, instead of having to figure out, well, how do we change the culture here? We need something. We got to have, believe me, whatever changes you wanted to make in your organization, now is the time. Because everything is up in the air. So as those cards come down, you have it, they're moving. The whole system is more loose, if you understand what I'm saying. The patterns are easier to influence now than they ever will be for a long time, probably. So if you've been looking to make changes in your organization, in your leadership, in your culture, in your processes, in your strategy, everything is going to be affected. The kind of people you hire, what skills you're looking for, the way you deal with conflict, how you communicate, everything is going to be affected. Now's the time. So there's unfreeze, change, and then refreeze. What happens next? Unfreeze, change, refreeze. It never stops. I was an Eagle Scout back in the day. I'm from Virginia, back in the States, and we used to take, canoe trips down the river, if you've ever been paddling down the rapids. And when you hit the rapids, all of a sudden, all your attention goes right down to, how am I going to get this little body through the next 30 seconds alive? You forget about the trees and the birds and all the other people and all your buddies in the other canoe. You get very, very self-centered until you get through the rapids, and then you hit this flat space when you can kind of rest on your paddles. My friend Peter Vail years ago said, we're in permanent white water. There is no resting on the paddles now. This virus has created an opportunity for us to change. Now, before I wrap up, I can see you, I'm getting the signal here. Here's how you do it. Adventus. You look at the past. You study the past carefully. And then you do a very, very different thing. You don't keep looking at the past and hope you guessed right. You turn 180 and you look into the future and you say, what do we want? What do we want to see when this is down the road? What do we want? Now's our chance. And you ask yourself and your people 3 questions. In all the areas I talked about, policies, strategy, everything. What do we want to hold on to? What do we think might still work? What do we want to hold on to? Secondly, what is this a good chance to let go of? It's not working. Everybody knows it's no big secret. Let's just let go of it and see what happens. And the third thing is, what do we want to continue to do or learn and develop that we never could do before? What do we want to hold on to? What do we need to let go of? And what do we need to learn or develop? The one thing I heard when I first came here was your national motto, which I just love. Damerad. No matter what, damerad. So I want to circle 2 things back to you. One is learn about Kurt Levine, learn about organizational change. It's what we do. It's what I came here to do. It's the moment for you to learn how to facilitate change. You're in the unfree state. Go for it. And the other thing is, you will come through this. I asked my Polish banking colleague some years ago, after the 2008 thing, I said, why didn't Poland fall into the trap? And she said, John, we are just too conservative. But she said, I think if one bank had started doing it, we might have started doing it. So I'm convinced there's something special about this country. There's something special that you're not going to fall for fads. It's going to have to be real for you. And I'm hoping that you will not only just survive this, but lead the way for the rest of CEE and for the rest of Europe. I don't know of another country that went from a tyranny to a democracy without a war. That's unbelievable. That's niewiarygodne. That's even more niewiarygodne than the Polish language. I think you can do this. Adventus, please. And I know that damerade. Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation.